My name's Colin Angle, and I founded my company iRobot 23 years ago with a single focus to make robots practical. In 1962, there was an American cartoon called The Jetsons with Rosie the Robot. And when the world saw Rosie, we all knew what the next big thing was going to be. Unfortunately, 40 years passed, and it didn't happen. What I'd like to spend a few minutes with you today talking about is the acceleration and coming of age of the robot industry. We are starting to see around the world applications where robots are actually making a difference, and we are actually seeing exciting new businesses spring up and change how we think about the world and how we think about machines. The important realization was that robots do not look like this. Instead, if you want to make a business, if we want robots in our world, we need to think about what are the challenges that face people on a daily basis, and to think about how we can create intelligent machines that can deliver more value than they cost to produce. If we can do that, we have created a great business. If we make something that is an amazing and exciting demonstration, we have made an exciting demonstration and had very little impact on the world. I believe that for every successful robot product, there are many thousands of demonstrations of robots. To give you an example of a success where, by abandoning traditional notions of what a robot should be, we have created something of real impact, we can look at vacuuming robots. So this is the Roomba. This is my robot. We've sold over 10 million of these robots, and I think people would find it surprising if I told you that 15% of all of the money spent in the world on vacuum cleaners today is now spent on robots. And in fact, in a few countries, the number one selling vacuum in the entire country is now a robot. This is an example of what can happen when you actually get it right. You actually say, well, people don't want to vacuum, people don't have time to vacuum, so how do we solve that? Another example of where robots are creating value is in very dangerous situations. In 2002, there was a great challenge in Afghanistan, and the United States sent soldiers to Afghanistan, and we were watching the television, and they told us how the soldiers would have ropes tied around their waist to go into the caves in Afghanistan. So if they were hurt or shot, you could drag the soldier out using that rope. And we said, that's a crazy, crazy thing. Why has not technology solved this problem? Why are people doing that instead of robots? So we had a project to make a robot. We sent it over to Afghanistan. We sent it into caves. We found some very, very scary things. This is all automatic weapon ammunition and explosives found in a cave by the robot. And we made a difference. Perhaps the most easy to understand and graphical way of the difference I will demonstrate with two short videos. Both happened in the streets of Iraq. The first demonstrated here, where you have a Humvee. Can we have the sound up? You can see pushing a bomb off the street. Now, contrast that video with this video of a robot doing the same sort of thing. Again, the volume.
There's the OD's robot.
So you can see by that orange can is the robot. So in the first video, you heard screams. The driver of that vehicle was not killed, survived, but here we have laughter and guys saying, dude, I caught that on video. So the robot was in fact destroyed, but other than that, we had resolved the situation. So again, robots going into very scary and dangerous situations and able to change the equation and protect the lives of people trying to protect us. So this technology, this idea that was represented by those robots that you just saw is the beginning of a very exciting idea. We can create robots that can act as surrogates for our physical self and change the meaning of what being someplace means. So the next industry which is going to be changed by robots is healthcare. We're seeing a world where the sophistication of healthcare is increasing every single day. Treatments are more and more sophisticated, but it requires doctors with an increasingly sophisticated understanding of a narrow area of medicine to make sure that the patient gets the right treatment. This is causing a new challenge in medicine, trying to match up the specialist with the patient that needs his or her expertise. So what a great opportunity to create a robot not to defuse bombs, but to diagnose patients at a distance. So this robot that you see behind me is deployed. There's about 50 of these robots in action today in many different hospitals in the United States and Mexico, and growing into an increasing number of hospitals. And the way they work is a big city hospital, which has these specialists, actually sends the robots to rural hospitals. Now that rural hospital can see a patient. Say right now the most common use is for stroke. A patient goes to the small hospital. Instead of the doctor walking in to see the patient, a robot drives in, performs the diagnosis, the right drug or the right treatment is applied to help that patient be stable. And then if the patient can stay in that rural hospital, he or she does. If he needs additional treatment, he can now be safely moved to the larger hospital. We have seen dramatic increases in the outcomes of patients in these rural hospitals using this robot technology. And we should expect to see robots play a larger role in providing healthcare because it will allow us to leverage fully the education of the doctors around the world to be put to use in the best possible way. How about something a little closer to home? Why do we all have to travel if we want to go somewhere? This is a new idea where I could be giving this talk to you today as a robot and able to do a different talk on the other side of the world tomorrow using a robot. This idea of making the world smaller, not just for doctors, but for anyone, is a very exciting idea. So we have created a robot, and I in fact have given a number of talks using this robot. And it's very exciting. I can stand up, I can give my talk, I can go answer questions afterwards. When my time is up, I can drive out of this hall and meet other people and answer their questions and behave exactly like I would if I was here in person. And as a result, I make the world a little smaller and I increase our ability to communicate with each other. So The robot industry is changing. The robot industry is changing other industries, but it's also being changed itself, which is very exciting. In 1990, when I founded iRobot, if I wanted my robot to be wirelessly connected to something else, I had to build the radio. I had to build the artificial intelligence, not surprisingly. I had to build the vision system, the navigation system, the manipulators, the touchscreen interfaces, the voice recognition. In fact, the only things I could depend on and borrow from other industries were batteries and motors. Today, that is no longer the case. The video game industry and the mobile industry have solved many, many challenging robot problems. I can use Siri or Dragon naturally dictate for my speech recognition. I can use wireless communication. I can use gesture recognition from my Kinetic Xbox. All of these technologies I can assume exist and focus the robot industry on navigation, perception, and manipulation. So I'd like to give you a little example of what the state of the art looks like. In order to make that medical robot work, the robot has to understand the hospital, because the doctor isn't going to drive the robot to the patient. He has other things to do, and in fact, he may never have been to the hospital before. He would like to say, I want to see patient in room 602, and the robot should get there all by itself. So that means that robots have to be able to map automatically. So we've created a robot that does just that. You drive the robot around the building, the robot creates a map, it is registered against a floor plan of the building, and the robot knows where room 602 is. We want the robot to understand and recognize objects in the room. So we needed to create a technology that would allow the robot to say, I know what that is. So we created a system called Viper, which will recognize exact objects and exact copies of those objects, regardless of the lighting, regardless of the orientation of that object, and do that reliably. And we do that and are able to do that in a very, very tiny microprocessor. So here we have a cell phone.
Chicken noodle soup, tomato sauce, 15 ounces.
So this system will allow a robot to recognize dollar bills, different objects, as long as they are exactly like other versions of it. So that's cool. But what about generic classes of objects? When you walked into this auditorium, you may have never seen a chair that looked exactly like the one you're sitting in, and yet you recognized it as a chair and used it to sit down. Well, a robot should be able to have that same understanding of categories of objects so that it can clean under them, it can recognize what type of room it's in, and have a better awareness of where it is. So this is a demonstration of a technology called iSpot that does exactly that. So what you'll see here is a robot driving through a building which has a number of different types of kitchens and different appliances, and dynamically in real time recognizing the category of the appliance in that kitchen area automatically. So if you were a robot and you were doing that mapping, you could also be looking at all the different appliances and fixtures in that room and be able to tell, just like you or I could tell, whether that room was the kitchen or the den or the living room. So as we get better and better at making our robots more capable of understanding their environment, more capable of moving around that environment, and ultimately able to pick up and lift and move objects, we create more and more exciting industries. And that's very good, because in 1962, we saw Rosie the robot and we said, when are we going to have robots in our lives? And 50 years has passed. And now we're starting to see some applications and some robots that actually we can afford and bring into our lives. But if you compare the number of robots that are out there today and match that up against the need, match that against the opportunity that robots will play in the future, I believe you will agree with me when I say we are just about none of the way in accomplishing what we will accomplish over the next decades. Thank you very much.